morning. How are you all today? Hi, my name is Lisa Wilson. I'm the Associate Provost of Finance and Administration here. And I have the privilege today of introducing this session that you've come to. This is Inspiration and Engagement Across the Generations. I think you're in for a real treat. Your two presenters today are phenomenal key individuals as part of the university's administration. So I want to make sure to give them their due credit. Our first to my right is Dr. Craig Rudick. He's the Executive Director for Institutional Research and our lead data scientist. That sounds impressive. Craig's been with us a while, so let me get to his bio. I want to make sure that I give him all due credit where it's due. His office is responsible for the official statistics, which that's very important. I know everybody on UK students and employees, as well as in-depth analysis into trends and metrics. You're going to see a lot of that today, so some really good stuff. He's been here at UK for about 4 years, and he's been with the analytics team, but he's been in his current role for about 18 months. So Craig is a really key individual. Also, we have Ms. Amberly Fay. She is our Engagement and Work-Life Director. She's responsible for administering that UK Work-Life Survey. She analyzes those results, so another data geek, we love that, and providing action, planning, guidance, and support. And she's been with the university on the healthcare side for about 9 years, and most recently she joined the HR team, and she's had that role for about all of 7 weeks. So it's baptism by fire, Amberly. Yay, we're so glad they're here. So today you're going to hear 3 really key points. I want to make sure that I point those out. So you're going to get to hear about the makeup of UK's family. So the age and generational demographics. I know that you guys have been looking at leadership across the generations. So this is going to be really interesting, I think, to look at our UK family from that light. You're going to have an opportunity to dialogue on the characteristics of the generations. And then you're going to have the opportunity to hear about and talk about engagement strategies that strive to inspire each generation to be their best in a healthy working environment. So I think that sounds fantastic. How about y'all? Awesome. Well, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters. They've got some good stuff to show you.
Great. Good morning. I know I love sharing the stage with a lead data scientist. Right? That sounds pretty impressive. So today, we do have some fascinating statistics for you, so looking forward to sharing that as well. But raise your hand if you were at the keynote yesterday, Ryan Jenkins. Okay, so quite a bit. So I think one key takeaway from yesterday that I'll reiterate today is these are not absolutes. So strategies and engagement and what each generation values, it really just gives us insight into the disruptions and then how to mitigate some of those disruptions. So nothing we see is really that in stone absolute truth. I think the previous speakers talked about truth with a capital T. So I appreciate that because nothing we say is really that capital T. So with that, I'll turn it over to Craig to start us off.
All right, thank you. So, yes, as I say, I'm lead data scientist, so I really think of myself as just the university's biggest data geek. So we're going to see a lot of data about the university for this presentation, right? So what this is we're talking about, age and generational issues. So this is the UK family based on when they were born, right? And so we're going to see this a lot. We've basically broken up our population into, we've got undergraduate students, we've got postgraduate students, faculty, campus staff, and UK healthcare staff, right? And as we think about generations, right, by far the youngest are undergraduate students, right? The majority of the freshmen this year were born in 1999. That's the first year of Generation Z. They are here and they are coming. Every year there's going to be more of them, right? It's only going to get more, right? So when we're going to talk about, actually there's about 50,000 people, approximately, students and staff at UK, right? About 45% of those are undergraduate students, right? They're by far the largest population here, right? And so, many of you are probably like me. I actually don't really talk to that many students during the day, other than the 2 or 3 who work for me. But it's really important, though, like I said, they are the bulk of the people who are on campus every day, and that they're the people we're trying to educate, and so engaging them is going to be super important, right? And of course, as we go on, as you expect, right, graduate students are a little bit older. Faculty are actually sort of on average our oldest population. That's mostly because if you know anything about faculty career progression, they don't get hired until their 30s usually. But yeah, this is who we are as a campus.
Any surprises?
So breaking it down by the generations, right? These are the sort of classic generational breakdowns, right? So we still have a few greatest generation folks on campus, not too many. Most of them have retired out. We still have plenty of baby boomers, lots of Generation X folks. By far, the biggest population on campus is millennials, right? So like I said, our students are just starting to become Generation Z. And even if you look at our employees, most of our employees across every category are actually millennials, right? You're looking at two of them right here on stage, or in front anyway. So even if we, this is everyone at UK, right? But even if we do this by employees, we'd still be talking mostly millennials, right? And then of course Generation Z says going on strong.
I sometimes feel like we need to wear like T-shirts that say "I am a millennial" or "I am Gen X." It's a little bit like a personality profile, right? You can kind of get a little bit more of an understanding of their perceptions based on their generation. So why do we care? Why are we talking about generations? Why is this important? So some of these bullet points: 5 generations that we could be working side by side. So first time in history that's happened. Each of us, each generation, views the world just a little bit differently. So we all have perceptions based on the experiences that we've had, and we've all had different experiences. And so some of the characteristics and some of the influential events that the speaker spoke about yesterday, so think about what's been influential in your life and has other people experienced that. So I think that drives a lot of those perceptions. And as we know, a lot of those perceptions are the reality in which we live. So these differences, all of those different perceptions and how we view the world really can cause a lot of strife with teams. So actually the panel before, they had some great, raise your hand if you were here for the panel. I loved it, it was great. One of the questions I wanted to ask, and I went up and talked to him a little bit afterwards, was, you know, when you teach or if you supervise multiple generations, how do you do that? How do you adapt and change to fit the style of each student? And how do you do that with employees? It's difficult. I don't think anyone has the right answer, but it's just this awareness piece. And then each generation has something valuable. So I think that, and each generation thinks they're right? We all think we're right. But valuable to add, there's a lot of misconceptions, I think, with millennials. You know, oh my gosh, they're so entitled. They have no idea what the real world means. You know, some of that may be true in some cases, but again, back to that perception. But millennials do have something valuable to add. Gen X has something valuable to add. Baby boomers, our traditionalists that are still on campus, their experiences we all have something valuable to add. And like I always have to put in there, and we're all right, right? We all think that we're right. So, double duty here. So why focus on engagement? So I think it's important probably to define engagement. So we talk a lot about engaging different generations, but really what does engagement mean at the end of the day? So it's the relationship an employee or really a student has with the organization. So it's that, but it's not just a commitment to the organization or loyalty to the organization when they think of a discretionary effort, but it's also the university's commitment to us as employees. It's really sort of that mutual relationship. And so that's what we look at with engagement. And so why is this important? Why do we focus on what drives engagement, try to understand the work environment? For these reasons right here. So conflict in the workplace. So raise your hand if you've ever had a discussion with your employees or your supervisor around work hours. Almost everyone in the audience. Work ethics. Absolutely. Communication breakdowns. Yes. Problems dealing with change. Yes. Everybody just keep their hands up. Just keep your hands up. Discomfort with rapid progress of technology. Ideas of service. So I came from the healthcare side, and we had this conversation a lot about what does service look like for someone who was just hired, and what does service look like for someone who's been in the organization for 30 years. And it was very different. And no one was wrong, and no one was right. I mean, again, everyone's right, with their perceptions. But it came down to a lot of expectations in the work environment. And then confusion over issues of respect. So this is a huge one, and I think it's one that we can continue to dialogue about. So we talked about yesterday in one of the sessions, I think someone had a question about, why should we care about students with regards to why should we change how we interact, or why should we change how we communicate with students or younger generations, or why should we change at all? And I think it comes down to respect. So how can you meet someone halfway? I had this conversation this morning with kids. We had a little bit of World War III this morning over within Generation Z. Raise your hand if you deal with Generation Z at home. It's lovely. And so we had a conversation about respect and meeting the child had to meet the parents halfway with regards to technology. So we're dealing with it not only at work, but also in our home lives as well. So it's always interesting.
All right, so we're going to start talking specifically a little bit about Generation Z. And we're talking about Generation Z, of course, it's our students, right? So this is just a little bit more of a detailed look at our students, like we said, those that, if you were born 1999, you're 18 in 2017, right? So that's the first year of Gen Z. What I think is actually really interesting here is if you kind of go all the way kind of down to this side, the left side of the chart, right? We've got a fair number of students, undergraduate students even, who are born before 1970, right? I mean, these are what you generally call non-traditional students, right? But there are 90-year-old students in our classrooms along with the 18-year-olds, right? And that's something that we always need to keep in mind, that even though we generally think of our student population as a sort of monolithic group, they're actually really diverse in terms of their age and their experiences, and that if you are teaching a class, unless it's maybe UK 101, which is pretty much only freshmen, almost anything else you can do, you should expect to have a very wide range of experiences. And I think if we're really doing our instruction right, then we can use that to our advantage in the classroom, right? This is actually one of my favorite charts in this whole thing. What I did is I calculated for every student taking a class, what's the difference between them and their instructor, right? So how much older is the instructor than the student, right? And I had no idea what the answer was going to be when I actually made this. I was really interested to see, right? So the most common is sort of 15 to 19, has that been? So, really kind of in that basically 10 to 30 years is where most of those are, but we certainly get a lot of instructors who are significantly 40, 50 years older than their students, right? And it's not a problem, it just is something that I think, we constantly need to be aware of, the different backgrounds that we bring. What's also interesting is that we have a few students taking classes from people who are younger than they are, right? I mean, I didn't go too deeply into this. I imagine that's a lot of, very junior faculty, graduate assistants, right, teaching classes, right? But it's also going to be, that 90-year-old coming back and taking undergraduate classes. It's going to be older than most of his professors. But yeah, there's this very wide range of ages, and I think that's something that, if we do it right, can be a strength in our teaching.
I just want to comment on that. The 50 years or greater, what does that look like in a classroom? know, and think about, so from a technology perspective, what does that look like? You know, and how do you bridge that? So it's an interesting conversation. So yeah, thanks. So engaging Gen Z. Does this picture look familiar for people? Yes. So I ride the shuttle in the mornings from the K-Lot to my office, and I feel like it's almost a necessity to get my phone out just so I can feel like I'm kind of a student. So it's, you know, everybody's looking down and everybody's on their phone. So this resonates with me quite well. So diversity and inclusivity. So what drives Gen Z? And so we're just learning a little bit. So there's a little research out there about what it's going to be like for them in the workplace and what drives their levels of engagement. Number one, diversity and inclusivity, which I think is extremely exciting. So what we learned yesterday from Gen Z is that they truly believe they're global citizens. So they're not just citizens of Lexington or of Kentucky or the U.S., they are citizens of the world. So their reach and how they connect with people is so different than what many of us can even understand. So I wonder if she's in here. There was a lady at the Boone Center who was talking about yesterday at one of the sessions about her son who was connected through gaming. Yes, I just love that because I just think that, you know, holds true for so many of our Gen Z is that his friends live all over the world. What a small world, right?
He's been connected with some of them for 4 to 5 years.
What was it?
He's been connected with some of them for 4 to 5 years.
So he'd been connected with some of them for 4 and 5 years. So gone are the days of pen pals. Do you guys remember pen pals? Right? Where you like wrote a letter, very antiquated, maybe even in cursive. Like that doesn't even exist anymore, right? And you mailed it to Australia and you just hoped that, you know, that person would write you back. And now people are instantaneously connected to people all over the world. Isn't that fascinating? I mean, it's exciting. So that's not just an expectation for them because they've been connected just about their entire lives. It's the standard. It's what they expect. It's what they just is the norm for them when they enter your classroom or when they enter your organization as an employee. So all of our focus, I think that's what makes UK unique too, all of our focus on unconscious bias, all of our focus on diversity and inclusivity, this is fantastic. I mean, it is making us aware and creating an environment of inclusivity for everyone. How important is that for our employees and for our students? So I congratulate everyone on their work for that because it's extremely important to not only the generations that are currently here, but our future students and future employees as well. So professional development. I love the saying that we don't know what we don't know, right? And so Gen Z recognizes that. They understand that, you know what, maybe they don't have all the answers. All the answers are at their fingertips with Google and internet, but they seek out and they will continue to seek out that professional development. So one thing I thought was interesting that we learned yesterday too was retention and how it's going to look different for Generation Z. So millennials tend to job hop and, you know, looking for the grass is always greener, looking for the next best thing. So Gen Z may be a little bit different with regards to being more loyal to an organization. And so once they come through the doors of UK, they're going to stay. Maybe not within that current role, but they're going to stay. So opportunity for innovation. I think this is a no-brainer, right? They're going to be seeking out ways for innovation. So how do we think outside the box? Continue to challenge us as instructors and challenge us as supervisors, continue to challenge the environment for ways in which we can do things more effectively and more efficiently. And then the employee experience. So I get excited about this. In my role, looking at engagement, work life, what is the employee experience? And they're going to be asking that same question. What's your employee experience? So new employees are going to be asking that, new students are going to be asking, what's the experience at UK? So what is our experience? Do we know what that experience So I think it's something that we sort of can glean some insight into from our UK at Work survey. But then I challenge each of you, do you know what that experience is in the place that you work? Are you able to speak to that? What are the benefits of working in human resources? What are the benefits of working in finance? What are the benefits of being a lead data scientist? What does that experience look like? And not just from a, compensation, not from time off, but just the full breadth of experience. What do you get? Because I think they're going to look for the meaning behind it. Why is it important to work here? Why is it important to come to school here? So do their values align with our values? So we'll be seeing a lot of that. Any questions? Okay.
All right, millennials, as I said, make up the bulk of the people here at UK, and they make up both the bulk of both the students and the employees. And so this was kind of interesting thing that I learned when I was looking through this data. So what this chart is doing is it's looking at the average age of our employees across some fairly standard sort of job groupings, right? So I don't know how well people can read, but so we have executive, managerial, faculty, service maintenance, clerical, professional, and technical staff, right? So different buckets of staff. And then there's two different colored lines here. There's bars. There's a blue bar, which is campus staff, and there's a purple bar, which is UK healthcare staff. Healthcare is younger in every way. And so they're not just younger on average. They're younger across comparable positions, right? I don't know exactly what that means, but I find it really interesting, right? And I definitely think that it says something. It's going to naturally have an impact on the workplace culture on the two different areas of campus, right? Whether we're talking about the sort of older generations that are predominantly on campus and the younger generations that are predominantly in UK healthcare, right? So, actually, yeah. So I wanted to understand a little bit about why UK healthcare is younger. And I think what it really comes down to is that UK healthcare has been hiring a lot of people lately, right? And so what I've done here is across our three different groups of employees, faculty, campus staff, and healthcare staff, look at the generation of the people who have been hired over the last 5 years, right? And so what we can see is that over the last 5 years, it's not even just that healthcare has hired more people. The people who they have hired are younger, right? So, and you can see that because in these purple bars, right, this is the healthcare. The millennials, by far the biggest group here. Now they're the biggest group in campus staff, but campus has actually hired more baby boomers and more Generation X people than healthcare has, right? So healthcare is not only hiring a lot of people, they're hiring young people, right? At a much higher rate than campus. And of course faculty, it's fairly natural that they are going to be, I think, hiring people a little bit later generations, right? But so I think, I don't know, like I said, to me, this was really interesting to see just how much the new hiring is there, and there is definitely a difference in the people that are being hired in healthcare and campus staff. And then, as we saw, I think from the last chart, it's not even just that, that there are certain positions that are getting hired in healthcare, and like the type of position maybe that they're hiring tends to be a younger person employed there. Because we looked at it before, it doesn't matter what position we're talking about. Healthcare is younger, right? And so there is something fundamentally different, and it's not good or bad. It's just slightly different, I think, about the hiring practices between healthcare and campus, since the healthcare is hiring younger people.
Any comments? Okay, right here first.
I think a lot of that also stems from healthcare has been promoted now as the up and coming, even though it's been around for decades and centuries. But then it's the up and coming job to be in. It's a job market that you want to be in, whether it's whatever part of healthcare, as long as you got your foot in the door. So it's not so much that we're hiring younger, it's the applicants that are coming are younger. So our pool is younger than we're choosing from. And I know from my perspective, that's not only when I'm putting out interviews, of course, we don't have ages on there, so we don't know, but when I see them, they're younger. And that's my applicant base is coming. But I think a lot of it is because we're being told, you know, we're telling our younger generation, go into the healthcare. I know as a parent, that's what we're telling them. Healthcare is going to be around, it's going to sustain. And also, they look at the benefits and the financial reward coming back from healthcare, that usually that's going to pay higher in this industry market across the country than, say, Scholastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think actually one of the huge things about it too is mobility. If you're in the healthcare profession, you can work almost anywhere. Right.
Just a comment, I really appreciate what you said about it's not just the job types. When I saw this slide, I was like, oh, it's because expansion is really a lot of nurses that we're hiring, right? That's where a lot of the growth is in UK healthcare. And we hire a lot of new grads, so I was just making that assumption. But when you tie back to that, it is interesting. There's something there that presents that workforce as being skewing younger than the campus side. So
Yes.
just a comment.
Craig?
Yeah.
The data we were looking at on the next slide was new hires, correct?
Yeah.
So could it be kind of the chicken and egg effect with millennials? In other words, there's job hopping, therefore there's more openings. We're hiring millennials, and there's job hopping, therefore.
It could be, though it's certainly the case that the total number of staff has grown in UK healthcare at a faster rate than it has on the campus side. But you're right, I haven't. Well, this would be original hire data UK is how I did this, right? So if you're not, it wouldn't just be switching between jobs at UK. It would have to be new. We're only looking when they started at UK. But still, I mean, I think part of the point that actually. Get back to the point is that, yeah, it's easier to move. Like there's a lot of hospitals, there's a lot of healthcare institutions everywhere. There's only so many universities, right? And so I think it could also be the nature of the workforce.
Because I always like to ask more questions. I think what would be fascinating, because it is easier to move, therefore it is harder to retain, what do our retention and promotion data look like generationally? What are we doing to hold on to experienced talent, to maybe keep that younger talent in the door and give them opportunities to move up?
Well, at least from a data perspective, Katie and I have been working on that a lot lately, and I think that by this time next year, I hope we can give you some really good, a lot of data on how that works. But it's not something we've, it's a relatively new priority for us to look at.
We can share that university-wide, our turnover is about 10%, and when we split it by healthcare as well as by campus, both of those run lower than industry average. So our retention is good, but we really do need to study it to see what are the drivers for turnover, especially undesired turnover. It certainly would be delightful to think about playing with it by generation. So I envision that being something that I too will look at. I know this is week 8 for me. So I look forward to it because I'm interested from an engagement perspective, absolutely, is digging into that data a little bit more to understand why are people leaving, is it for X, Y, or Z, and then how can we retain them? Because I'm sure it looks different by generation. Any other comments, questions? No, back. Sorry, yes, thank you.
I just want to ask, for the new hires, what's the average pay for different generations? Do you have any data on that? I assume the younger people will pay less than the older people, but not sure.
You want the completely honest answer? Is that I have that data, but I specifically chose not to look at it for this public setting. But that's something that I think that as we do more in-depth analysis, HR is going to be very interested in. But I just,
Okay, millennials, workplace flexibility. Again, everybody raised their hand previously that they've had these types of conversations. So I would just say that, in healthcare, it's probably a little bit different, right? So the flexibility may not be as pertinent, but also the expectation as well. You know, if you're a nurse and you're asking for workplace flexibility, what does that look like? Maybe to them, it's, 410s or 312s. So that can be sort of that workplace flexibility conversation. So I would really say it's provided. So the Office of Work Life and Human Resources. So we have these conversations with supervisors quite often with regards to, is this an opportunity? Does this work for you? So at the end of the day, it's up to the supervisor to make that decision whether or not this works. But it is something that we provide. So we just have those conversations to ask the questions of, what are the alternatives? Can this person do this job from home? Can they do it remotely? So it is a benefit that's provided. I would say we don't have hard and fast numbers on the utilization of workplace flexibility just because our office, we provide those resources, but we don't have a centralized approval process. But it is something I'm really interested in and trying to understand what areas on campus provide that workplace flexibility. And is that a driver of, back to Melody's comment, is that a driver of retention? So we are keeping employees because we're allowing that flexibility. So this is a huge driver with the millennial generation. So ongoing training and development, so similar to Gen Z with regards to that continuous learning. So the development, what does their career path look like for them? And it may not be linear, it may be circular, it may be something we've never even seen before, because their career path for a millennial may not always be a traditional career path. So I had this conversation with yesterday about parents of a older generation saying, gosh, what are you going to do with that history degree? Or what are you going to do with that, X, Y, and Z degree? And it's fascinating because, actually right here, yeah, you're here. So we had this conversation. So we talked about career paths for millennials, right? Do you want to sort of speak to, not to put you on the spot or anything, but we just had a funny conversation about that.
So one thing that we talked about yesterday, I don't know if I speak loud enough, I probably do. Yeah. But I started out at the university as an undergraduate in anthropology, and I stuck around and ended up in a career in web development, multimedia, graphic design, just because of the different skills and opportunities I picked up while here at the university. So I still love my anthropology training, and I think it taught me a lot about critical thinking and working with people. But I found my passions elsewhere, and so that's how my career ended up going. And I've always been fascinated about this millennial job hopping thing, and I think it depends on the workforce. Because we had this discussion yesterday. How many millennials came to UK and stuck? I'm one of them, and I know there are several others. So I think the type of workplace is really what's going to hold us. If we believe in the mission and vision of the workplace, I think we're going to stay. I don't see myself leaving UK anytime soon, as long as I don't outgrow it. And I think that's my sticking point there.
And Justin, can I tag on what you
said?
I'm
My supervisor.
Justin and I work together, so we actually talk about these kind of issues a lot. If I had a T-shirt, it would say "Very late Gen Xer." So I took that quiz, and culturally, I'm Gen X, and my friends the same age as millennial. So toss a coin, see where it lands. But yeah, I think I was a history English major as an undergraduate, and I'm the communication director for the College of Public Health. Having come to UK when I was 23 for my first real grown-up job, and still here. While I'm not a UK graduate, I feel like I've been thoroughly indoctrinated at this point into the culture. So yes, you can do a lot of things with different degrees, and paths are not always linear. And I think something we were talking about earlier was workplace flexibility as well as professional development. And I will say for myself, the times of my life that I've looked to get outside the university were because I felt like I was in a dead end, that I didn't have opportunities for development or for growth. I found those and have stayed, so that's great. But I also, Amberly, I wonder if you guys could talk about the gendered aspect of workplace flexibility. You know, even 5-10 years ago, asking for workplace flexibility in my office at the time was really only accepted if it had to do with kids. And that really was only something that women did, and if you did, it put you on the mommy track, and that was bad, and people would look askance at you. So I'm wondering, with millennials coming up and more equal sharing of parenting duties and household duties, are we seeing more equitability in flexible work arrangements?
Very good question that I don't actually have the answer to at this point, but I will say that Zeta Beatty in our office, so she's the new manager of Work Life, she just literally put it on my desk last week with a lot of research on fathers actually, and taking time off and different kinds of leave and what does that look like, and all of the stigma around that, you know. And so we're sort of looking at that. Like I said, I'm not sure. There may be some previous, I don't know if Katie knows if there's been some previous research out of the Work Life office with regards to that, but something I would definitely want to look into. So sorry, I don't have the exact answer to that question.
Yeah, it's you know, I think a lot of us who I married into having a kid, so I missed the first few years, but
Thanks. Sorry, we're videotaping first, live streaming, so sorry.
So, you know, my husband is also, he's an academic, and it's interesting because when he says, oh, I gotta leave this meeting because I gotta pick up my daughter, people are like, you are such a good dad, that is amazing, you know. And when women do it, it's like, oh gosh, we have to do her report for her again, you know. And I think, however progressive we feel like we are as a university, on a personal level, some people still catch that kind of flack.
Right.
So I'm glad to hear that HR is looking into those kinds of issues around flexible work.
Thank you. So involvement in decisions. So I loved this analogy yesterday of millennials, their best friends. Take a guess. Parents. I'm thinking, gosh, is my mom my best friend? It's almost embarrassing. But you know what's funny is after they said that, and I was thinking through it, I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, I do text her all the time. You know, like now that we have text messages, it's fantastic. But involvement in decisions. I was always at the table with regards to having conversations, having those what I would consider adult conversations when I was a child. And so I think that was a lot of this involvement decisions. What decisions really was I making at 12 and 13? Probably nothing important to the family, but I felt included. I was at the dinner table having a conversation with my parents. What are we gonna do this weekend? What are we doing tonight? What are we gonna have for dinner? Like all of those, it may seem so minor, but that was sort of set the stage for probably my entire life, right? So this inclusion of being at the table to make those decisions, it is sort of an expectation for some millennials to be at the table, and so important because again, everyone has something valuable to add to that conversation. And I think it's just important, and I know that there's some data around this too, just from here of the UK at Work survey, and do people feel like they're involved and at the table? So I look forward to sharing some of that information as well once we have that. And then collaboration. I mean, really those two go hand in hand. We're looking teamwork, collaboration, having diverse teams, being able to be involved in those decisions, all very important to millennials. Oh, these are my, guess who's a millennial? People know who these people are. These are some of my famous millennials. Influential is the first one.
On which side?
Well, who's this? Yes. Hermione Granger. Come on. Emma Watson, yes, that's her real name, but for Harry Potter, Beyonce, exactly.
All right, we're on to Generation X. So millennials are actually sort of the sort of most represented generation, but actually the average or median employee in the UK is Generation X, right? So they're sort of in the middle, and so what I've got here, right, is looking at the last, whatever, 8-ish years, right, the average age of our employees at UK across the 3 different groups, right? And so we talked about how UK healthcare is the youngest, and they're getting younger. And that's because they've been hiring an awful lot of millennials, right? So they are absolutely, they are getting younger all the time, right? Campus is a little interesting here. We were getting older for a while, between 2009 to 2014 here. And then in the last year or two, the average age has started to go down, right? So I'm not sure what to expect actually over the next few years, right? Whether that's the last 2 years are a little bit of a blip or not. But whereas UK healthcare has definitely been getting younger, campus is a little somewhere between. In faculty has been relatively stable except for sort of 1 year where they hit going down. And that's actually interesting because basically one of the things that I actually saw when I kind of probed a little deeper into this chart is that literally every time that you see the average age decrease from year to year, it's essentially because we added new employees, we hired new people, and the people we hire are on average younger than the people that we already have. So like the 1 year where average age of faculty goes down, we hired a lot of faculty that year, right? And UK healthcare has been hiring like crazy for a while, and just in the last couple of years, the campus staff is also hiring rates have increased a little bit. So I thought that was sort of interesting to see the way that the different groups are sort of changing over time.
Are you all seeing this in different areas in which you work? Some heads shaking.
And then, faculty in particular, we say tend to be a little bit older. And so the most common age for faculty generation is Gen X, right? And so, the biggest milestone for faculty is getting tenure, right? And so I once again, this is a chart that I was just like, I want to really answer. I have no idea. So I basically want to see, when do faculty get tenure, right? At UK. And basically, so this is what we're showing here is by the faculty's age, it's at the bottom, running from about 30 to 65, right? What percentage of our faculty who are tenure eligible have tenure? And so that goes above 50% at age 40. Right? So our faculty are getting tenure at about age 40. If you're 40 years old now, that puts you 77. I think I can subtract 40 from 2017. And so that's getting at the end of Gen X, right? So basically, the vast majority of our tenured faculty are Gen X or later, right? And this is really where it kind of, I think, really ties back to that whole thing, the chart we showed before about difference between students and their instructors, right? Because these tenured faculty members are going to do an awful lot of the instruction at the university, and they're going to be teaching students who are 20 years younger than them.
So Gen X, I'm not going to have you raise your hand, even though I really liked that poll that we did yesterday to see what the makeup of the room was. That was great. So goals and autonomy. These are ways to engage Gen X. So really having that clear cut, what am I here to achieve? Because this is the generation that really started to focus in on, you know what, I actually want to go home to my family. I want some work-life balance. And so they want to know what those goals are. So this whole saying of work to live really sort of started hitting home with this particular generation. So the autonomy, micromanage. My husband, who's a Gen Xer, loves to micromanage, but he hates to be micromanaged. So I point that out quite a lot. And I tell him he's representative of his generation because of the whole micromanagement piece. So Gen Xers, they want to know what their goals are and then leave them alone so they can get those accomplished. Give them the tools and resources, but don't micromanage. Work-life balance, which we sort of talked about, and again, that workplace flexibility, work-life balance, meaning what are the benefits? Are there benefits associated with childcare? Are there benefits associated with elder care? At this point, you may be a provider for kids, but you also may be a provider for parents or grandparents. So this generation is dealing with both, all of which I'm happy to always talk about those benefits from human resources. And so we have a lot of resources to help our employees deal with childcare issues as well as elder care resources. So again, sort of focus on what makes UK unique with regards to those types of benefits, and we provide those, which I would always encourage everyone to take advantage of. Sort of leading into the benefits, workplace flexibility, and then communication. Understanding the why. So do we talk about this enough? Why do we do this? Why do we make these decisions? Why do I have to, write this paper, right? You probably have students asking that. Why is this decision being made? I wasn't at the table, I don't understand, I don't see the big picture. Why is that? It's constant. This generation always wants to understand, why are we doing things this way? And I think this is for all generations, to be quite honest. This is one of the characteristics of this particular generation, but I think it also spans across generations. If you know the big picture, you're going to be more willing to go above and beyond. If you understand the big picture and understand the mission of why you're doing something, you're going to get more engagement from that person. These are my pictures. Who's this? Right. Anyone? Yes! You guys are big winners. So Sarah Blakely is her name. She's basically a self-made billionaire. She's the founder of Spanx. So she is a Gen Xer. I know. Quite fascinating story, actually. She's pretty impressive.
Baby boomers. The most famous generation of all, I think, right? Kind of getting at, once again, sort of age difference themes. Before we looked at the difference between students and their instructors. And now I said, let's see what the age differences between supervisors and the employees that they supervise, right? Once again, this is one that I was just really fascinated to kind of see, especially as being someone who is a supervisor himself, who I have employees who are over 10 years younger than me and over 20 years older than me at the same time, right? And I think most of us who are supervisors kind of have those large sort of generational representation across our departments, right? So what's interesting here, right, is that when we looked at the instructional thing, there was like a very small group of students who were older than their instructors. Sort of in the middle of this chart, you can see where it changes from dark blue to light blue. The light blue at the top, by maybe 30% of our employees are supervised by someone younger than they are, right? So, of course, the average here, the mean mode, I guess is the correct word, is sort of in the 5 to 10, 15 years older range, right? But I think it's really kind of fascinating how much, like I said, it's definitely a different thing to be a supervisor of people who are significantly younger and who are significantly older than you are, and it's definitely really important, because when we're talking about engagement and things, I think one of the things that's really important to me, on my team, is that we really are a cohesive unit, right? That we all work together and kind of have the same goals, and kind of you have to balance those large sort of generational differences. That's one of the factors that you have to keep in mind as you're doing that, right? So, yeah, what's another chart that I really want to see what the answer is. And there it is.
And when you're a lead data scientist, you can look this up.
Exactly.
So I think this is fascinating too, because back to one of my earlier slides about the strife that can happen, be apparent when there's teams, but also when there's people you manage. So you've got this dynamic of supervisors and employees. And a statistic that I wrote down from yesterday, because I hadn't seen this one, 52% of workers say they're least likely to get along with someone from another generation. 52, over half. So when you have a supervisor who is 50 years older than you, what does that relationship look like? When you perhaps are 20 years younger than someone you supervise, what does that relationship look like? So those can be hard, those can be difficult conversations to have when you're going through a performance review. Feedback can be difficult, so you have to sort of manage those communications, those behaviors, and to be aware of that, I think, is just extremely important.
Right, and so this is the last chart we have for the day, which is good because we're getting close to the end. I wanted to look at sort of faculty ages and the progression across the faculty career path, right? And it's, kind of not terribly surprising that as you go from sort of more junior to more senior faculty, they're older on average, right? That is interesting. I thought the most surprising data point here is, so this is over here on the right is our full professors, right? These are, so they've had long and distinguished careers, right? It takes a lifetime to get to, full professor status, right? And we really said, like, the modal age, right? The most common age for these folks is over 65, right? Of our full professors, right? So that is, like I said, these are the sort of academic leaders on campus with the most experience and sort of the most to be able to, in a lot of ways, teach to students, and yet, in order for them to do that effectively, they're going to have to be able to communicate with people 45 years younger than they are, right? And so that is one of the reasons why I think, it's just so important to kind of that we keep in mind these sort of things so that we really can take that lifetime of experience and translate it down to not just the next generation, it's 2-3 generations before is really what we're talking about.
So engagement, so career advancements. We talked, I think Craig hit it on the nail on the head. Sometimes it takes what feels like a lifetime for baby boomers to get to where they want to be. So that career advancement, what does that look like? And they want that career advancement. They want to go to the next level. Recognition, and to be recognized along the way. So I think some of those public affirmations are really important to this particular generation. And they want to seek out challenges. So what are some of those difficult projects? So your baby boomers like those difficult projects, and then value their experience. So in the last panel, she briefly talked about narratives. So this is a great way for baby boomers and traditionalists too. If you value their experience, ask them questions, get them engaged in talking about what some of those experiences have been. That's how you're going to reach them. That's where, if they can talk about their experience and and some of their hardships along the way and what were they able to accomplish, you're engaging them by having that dialogue, and that's what's going to keep them engaged, is if you value what they have to say. So these are some of our famous baby boomers here. And I didn't realize this until I put them, but they're both in the power pose. I was like, yeah, I didn't even need to do that. And so we'll sort of wrap up with the 2015 UK at Work survey. So how are we doing? How do we measure? We talk about engagement, but how do you measure that? So one of our tools is the UK at Work survey. So we just wrapped up the 2017 survey, so those results will be coming out soon. But I pulled some of this just so you could see sustainable engagement. So we actually measure sustainable engagement by asking 9 particular questions on the UK at Work survey. And so it really gets at this engagement, being enabled and energized. So all of those make up sustainable engagement. So you can see I broke it down by here is 82% favorable overall. And then you can see by generation. So we're doing a pretty good job. Highlighted in green, so anything over like 75% favorable would be a positive and be a strength. So I think the takeaway is, you know what? We're doing a pretty good job at engaging all of our generations here at the university. So again, this is just employees, so this data is not students, but I think that we can all sort of look at this and say, okay, maybe I am communicating effectively, or maybe I need to hone in some of those communication skills. Maybe I need to make sure I'm aware of the makeup of what my team looks like, just so you can maybe adapt to some of those behaviors and change or in communication styles that maybe, again, meet that employee or supervisor halfway. And then the last slide is, you know what, at the end of the day, what are some of the characteristics that perhaps everyone values, regardless of what generation you're in? So we talked a lot about generations, but you know, we're all human. And we all tend to want some of the same things, right? We want to feel respected. We want to be listened to. We want to have opportunities for mentoring, whether it be mentoring to our employees or reverse mentoring, where they mentor us. Both of those are beneficial. Understanding the big picture we talked about. Effective communication, positive feedback, and then that exchange of ideas. This is what we all should take away from this, is that, yes, it's important to understand the generations for awareness. So just knowing what the generation is in the makeup of UK, I think helps us, gives us some insight into some of those, again, just like Myers-Briggs, right, ENFJ. So, now you know a little bit more about me, right? I'm a millennial, now you know a little bit more about me, so you may understand where I'm coming from when I talk about things. But at the end of the day, this is what we should all be doing with our students, with our colleagues, with our employees, with our supervisors, because this is what's important.
I just had a question about the engagement survey. Is
Yes.
that just something that's done here, or does it have national norms?
Oh, we do have national norms. So we have university norms as well as
And
national
how would
norms.
those know that I come from the UK healthcare side?
No, that's great. So what was the question?
How would those numbers compare to the national norms when you were saying sort of 82%?
I think, gosh, Katie, do you remember 2015? I don't remember because I've just been. No, I think we're right on par actually. I can definitely look that up, but just.
Been at her job for 7 weeks.
Yeah, no. But I think we're right on par with what those other norms are as well. I think from a university norm, we're definitely right there. I think from industry, we're a little bit lower, which is to be expected.
How much variability is there across colleges and departments in that 82%?
Very good question. From 2015, ask me in a couple weeks when I get the 2017 data, because I've not dug into the 15 data as much as I will be going in to look at some of those comparisons for 17, and then to look at the historical comparisons as well. But, an interesting statistic, because I come from the healthcare side, so I've been doing engagement for a while, but one of the interesting statistics around engagement surveys is variability. So 70% of variability is due to the supervisor. That's a lot.
Wow.
So, happy to share. So maybe next year I'll come back at one of these sessions and we'll talk about the 2017 engagement scores.
All right, well, we're 2 minutes over, so I'll be respectful of everyone's time. Thank you very much for being an excellent engaged audience.